Welcome to this week's Oregon Minute. This week we are interviewing Brett Rieman from Lakestone Properties to talk more about the affordable housing development that's making its way to the village on Janesville Street. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Emily.
How's it going today?
It's going well. Appreciate you taking the time to learn more about the project.
It's no problem. It's really convenient, just being able to pop on in my own home versus driving to the office. But yeah, so can you just tell me more in general? Give me an overview about this project that's going on Janesville Street, and what is it to bring to the village of Oregon?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long time in the making. We have a good relationship with village staff and plan commission and village board, and we did our first project in Oregon a few years ago, and ever since we have our just general follow-up calls with them, and they've talked about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing in Oregon, and it's a common thing that we hear through a lot of communities throughout Dane County, how affordable housing is needed. And so we started looking for land, and we had first reached out to this landowner about 3 years ago, and sometimes it takes a while. So we finally got under contracts earlier in the year, met with the village. They thought it'd be a great site for affordable, just because of the size of it. It's about 12 acres, and it gives a lot of room. It gives an opportunity to give multiple buildings. So the interest of Oregon in wanting it and pushing it made us want to look harder. Oregon also has a task force for affordable housing, which we didn't know about, but we met with them a couple years ago, and it's just the forward thinking that you don't see in a lot of smaller communities that encouraged us to stay looking in Oregon for a site. And finally we got this one under contract and have been working on it for about 6 to 9 months right now, and it's going very well. Tons of support throughout the community, throughout the neighborhood, the community in general, staff, plan commission, village board. Everybody wants this to happen and to bring it to Oregon. So it's been great so far. We're in the process of it, and hopefully, if things go well over the next few months, we can break ground in the spring.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been covering this project since its infancy, since it was in the conceptual stage when it came through the village in the summer. So it will bring it's three apartments, and then it's going to bring, as far as I understand, family and senior housing, and then hopefully some commercial space will come into the development.
Correct. Yeah. So first phase, we're focusing just on the affordable project, which, like you said, is 3 buildings, a total of 153 units. There will be 2 buildings that are family, and then 1 building that is senior. So it's restricted by age, which would be 55 and older. So we feel it's a nice mix for the development. And it'll be phased. So we'll start a building in the spring. It'll take about 12 months, but each building after that will follow a few months. So we're hoping the project gets done, all of the buildings, within a year and a half or maybe a little bit more. So the first building would come online spring of 2022. And then the other 2 will follow, in that, hopefully be completed by the end of 2022.
That's really exciting. So then, in my village coverage as well, I realized that you are currently, or Lakestone Properties is currently in the process of, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but applying for Wisconsin Economic Development Authority tax credits. And then you're also trying to get, some tax increment financing from the village as well. It looks like it's going to be around maybe 2.75 million. Would you want to elaborate more on that process for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very long process. It's we need a lot of help. So we have a lot of partners, consultants, different people helping us through this process. Because when you had mentioned WIDA, which is Wisconsin Housing Authority. You'd mentioned kind of TIF, tax incremental financing. So the tax credit investors and how these deals are put together, or there's tax credit investors, there's different funding sources, and because the rents are restricted, you have to get different sources of equity and funding from sources compared to a regular market rate apartment deal. So the reason that we need so much TIF or tax incremental financing is just to help bridge that gap. Because if you think about us building a regular market rate apartments, our rents will be a couple $100 a month higher per unit, which the numbers work. Construction costs are the same whether we're building this or building a market rate apartment. So the reduced income that we're getting from rents, we need to come up with it somehow, and these tax credit investors help with that. The TIF from the village helps with that, just fill that role of the reduced income coming in. So you need a lot of different participation from different groups, like Wisconsin, there's a WIDA, like the tax credit investors, like TIF from the local village, to really put one of these deals together. Compared to a market rate deal is so much easier. um, but this is beneficial and really needed, so that's why we're focusing so much effort on it.
So then, once, assuming that this goes through, I know the village board is looking at they did, for our viewers who may not have a lot of background, the village board did a financial analysis of the assistance that it could potentially provide to this development. And they're looking at that financial analysis at their next board meeting, I believe, which is December 7th. But then after that happens, assuming they're able to give you close to what you're asking for,
Yeah,
2.7, 2.75. What are the steps after that happens?
sure.
What
Yeah, no, good question. I think, and before I answer that, just with the TIF, how that's going to work is the village will, so if they agree on that number, Lakestone actually goes out and gets that loan. So it's not going to, so the taxpayers don't have to go get this loan. We go get this loan. But basically what happens is we'll get the loan for 2.7 million or so. It's on our name. We have to pay that. However, we'll pay in taxes on the property, and then the village will reimburse us for those taxes. So it's almost like the taxes go to help pay for the loan. So the good thing, the way we're structuring this, it's not, the village doesn't have to go out and get this loan. It's on the developer to go get it. But it helps with the village being okay with reimbursing our taxes to help pay for that. So just if that helps with the viewers, just understand what TIF is and how it's paid for. It's different in different circumstances, but that's kind of how we're doing it here. So if that does get approved, next steps are to get it's called SIP, Specific Implementation Plan, approved in January or February. And that's when the village looks at the finishes, the outside finishes on the building, lighting, landscaping, kind of how all that looks in the development, colors, and they'll comment on that. We'll change some things, go back and forth. And then once that's approved, we're really ready to go. So in the meantime, we're having plans being created by our architect that we can then take out to bid. And then hopefully, if everything lines up, we can start moving some dirt in April and get this project started. So a lot of things to do before that, but that's kind of the process and the goal.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the entire process from, getting a development, especially an affordable housing development, from the conceptual stage to the SIP stage. And
Mm.
so again, for our viewers, so a specific implementation plan, and thank you for explaining that, Brett, includes, like you say, everything about the building's exterior, just everything that's going to be specifically planned about a development. And then, correct me if I'm wrong again, Brett, but then before the SIP is going to go through, you had the general development plan, and then even before that, the conceptual plan. So can you
Correct.
tell our viewers what a general development plan is and how that differs from the specific implementation plan?
Yeah, you bet. Like you said, we kind of start with conceptual. So when it first starts, we just say, all right, we talk to an architect, engineer, and they lay it out, right? What can we fit on this land? Because there's so many things that go into where you put buildings nowadays with trying to retain water on a site. So rainwater, stormwater. Dane County wants all of your stormwater to be retained on your site. So that means you have to build ponds to hold that water. So the engineer comes up with how big of a pond you need, where you need to put them. So that's kind of first. And then you're like, okay, what's left over? Then you're like, okay, we can put the buildings here. Here's where the parking lots will go. Here's where the underground parking goes. So that initial first conceptual um, kind of planning goes a couple months, and you go back and forth with your engineer, your architect, and village staff and plan commission members. And then once you kind of get a good conceptual plan together, then you go to general development plan, which is a little bit more details about the overall project. How many buildings, the height of the buildings, how many units, the layout, because we had to get this rezoned to allow for multifamily, to allow for 3 buildings, to allow for the height of the buildings. So that really is involved. That all of that kind of is involved in the general development plan, the layouts, the units, the rezoning, and then the SIP, like we said, is more of the finishes, kind of the fun stuff, right? What's going to look like.
Yeah. So then, kind of getting into what it looks like during meetings, I've heard that this is comparable to the Nordic Ridge neighborhood in Stoughton. So can you just describe maybe what the exterior might look like?
You bet. Yeah, we did that. We completed a project in the Nordic Ridge Parade Home neighborhood in Stoughton just this past summer, and we're using a very similar building for this project. So and we're not 100% sure because with construction costs what it will look like, but the intent will be, there are 3-story buildings. We love to do hardy plank siding on it. A little bit of stone at the entrances would be great, but these affordable projects look basically identical to market rate projects that we've done in other communities like Oregon, McFarland, Stoughton, Mount Horeb. You really just can't tell the difference. So in my mind, they're Class A properties, just at more of an attainable rent.
Yeah, it's more so like it sounds like, whereas some market rate, the renter is, paying the costs of the development, there's other bodies being involved in this as well, taking
Yeah.
the burden off of the renter. So then this is more of a big picture question, but why might it be necessary, for rental property owners, for real estate companies, to embrace affordable housing right now?
It's the top basically need for every community in the country right now. It's what you read, it's what you hear about. There's tons of apartments going up. Right? You see them going up all over the place. I mean, it's what's driving construction in real estate are apartments, but 90% of those are luxury apartments. They're downtown, they're in nice communities, high rents, and the problem is people can't afford it. They say you're only supposed to spend 30% of your income on rent. However, if you're talking about paying $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom, it's out of people's price range, and it's stressing people's financial situation. So everybody sees this, right? The government sees it, local developers see it. So everybody's trying to find a solution to provide housing for people who work in the communities and want to live in those communities, because they're the opportunity for someone who works in the community like Oregon. There's not that many opportunities. There's some market rate apartments, there's some housing, but it might be too much for them. So providing an affordable product, which isn't a couple $100s a month. So when we say affordable, it's really, we're catering to households that make 35,000 to 70,000 a year. So it's not like it's a small amount, but it's really, when you say, okay, I'm only supposed to spend 30% of my income on housing, that means I have to be careful of how much I spend on rent or buying a house. So it's just providing another opportunity for people who want to stay in the community they live in or who have family in to live there. So it's just one of those things that the whole country, every community is trying to find ways to bring more affordable housing to the residents that want to stay there.
Well, especially as we're seeing, I mean, we had rent moratoriums and, eviction holds and things like that. And so those are, I've been hearing more news that those are soon to be expiring. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough, especially with the virus um, and everything else going on right now. So um, Brett, I think that answers all of the questions I have for today. But I always like to ask our guests: is there anything else that you would like to add before we conclude?
I would just no. Well, thank you for the time. I think I would just like to really again say thank you to the Oregon community. It's very refreshing to have everybody on the same page and to understand the need for something like this. And if this goes well, there's definitely more than this. So we're looking to build 153 units, which is a lot of units. But there's been housing studies that say, Oregon probably needs 200 to 300 units, and it's going to grow as the community grows and more retail comes into Oregon, more service workers. They need housing where they work. So if this is successful, and if people see it, and once they see it and like, wow, that's a really nice building and that's an affordable project. Let's do more of these. I mean, let's bring in more of this. I can see it growing throughout the community. It's just like I said, very refreshing to everybody from the community members to the village staff to plan commission to village board, all being aligned with these goals. It makes our life a lot easier to get one of these projects done. So thank you for bringing it, you know, to this media platform so more people can maybe hear about it, and hopefully this helps them understand a little bit more about what this project is.
Of course, yeah. And I will say it's been really exciting to get, be a part of getting this project off the ground from first seeing it in its conceptual stages over the summer and then now seeing it come to fruition, and soon there will be a building there. So that's really exciting. So, well, thank you, Brett, for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you taking the time as well. I know you are likely very busy, especially right now. But yeah, thank you for viewing today's Oregon Minute. Make sure to tune in every Thursday at 7 p.m.